369. I'm your host, Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. It is the 26th of March. The year is 2024. The country is the beautiful Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Paradise on earth, as some people might say. And some might say it's not even a real place. Use that as you will. Once you're on the inside, make sure you hit that like button. Double tap the screen if you're over there on TikTok. That's how you hit the like button there. You're viewing this on YouTube, hit that like button also. If you're looking at this on a repeat, now is a good time. You know, you just take that pause and run in and hit that like button. Make sure the like button feels your presence. It really does help with this whole algorithmic stuff. So let's jump in though into some of these stories this evening. The Prime Minister spoke on one of the issues that many people regularly bring up in terms of criticism of our present government: the closure of Petrotrin. It saved country from bankruptcy. That's what the Prime Minister is saying. This saved the country from bankruptcy. Something that, you know, we have spoken about before, when regularly people point at, you know, oh gosh, why you close Petrotrin? That's where people made money. Well, there was some debt holding on to the whole thing. Gersh is intrigued. Hey, Roni. Dalip says politicians feel that all citizens are easily fooled and gullible to their lies. This is the season. That's true. That's true. I mean, that's their work. It's your job to not be gullible. It's theirs to try and get you to be, I guess. Rowley on restructuring of Petrotrin. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley said, had the government not pulled the plug on the Petrotrin refinery in 2018, the country would have lost an additional US $5 billion. Rowley said the actions taken by the government in 2018 to restructure Petrotrin sought to protect the economy, the government's revenue stream, and prevent the threat of bankruptcy. He was speaking at the Heritage Industrial Compound Santa Flora yesterday during the launch of the Industrial Mechanical Apprenticeship Program. So people ask, what does the government do? What does the government do? There are things like this all the time. IMAP. I didn't know this one existed, but I'm not surprised. There are many different programs and studies and help out there for the young people and for people of Trinidad and Tobago all around the place. So let's not buy into the idea too much that there's nothing out there. There's a lot. Petrotrin would have lost at least $5 billion between 2018 and 2022. So by this year, this time, add another $5 billion in losses to Petrotrin's operations, he said. He added it was a conscious decision to avoid the IMF, as the agency would have demanded that government subsidies be immediately cut before issuance of monetary aid. But there's a huge price you have to pay for that, and the price is you virtually lose control of how you make decisions in the country. Before you get this money, you have to sign to stop that. While I am Prime Minister, we will avoid the IMF at all costs. We will not use any IMF program as rectification. We will prescribe our own medicine and take our own medicine on our own terms. It will not be painless, but it will be on our own terms, he continued. Now, good night, El Chapo. I know the decision to close Petrotrin down is one that many people don't agree with. And I know I don't have all of the information around this. The information that is given seems to suggest Petrotrin indeed was in dire straits. RL asks, what was the problem with IMF? You understand that previously having dalliances with the IMF resulted in strict belt tightening and what do they call those measures? There's a word they call those measures, those belt tightening measures. There's a technical term for it inside of the politics and economy. Oh gosh, like hard time measures. I forgot the word for it. But during that time, you could basically lay some of that blame for even the coup that happened in Trinidad and Tobago. They demand how strict your measures are going to be. If you are going to use their money, they are going to get into your country and tell you how your country should run. Okay, you have too much public service, cut back your public service. You're spending too much on transfers, cut back your social services, cut back your grants, cut back your entitlements, cut back your subsidiaries. And that's and that's what the IMF does, because they're giving you money when you're in a... Listen, the IMF is the group that lends money to the people after they're bankrupt, basically. After someone runs their ship horribly, so horribly they crash their economic ship, they go to the IMF to borrow money. That tells the IMF something. These people, obviously, are not very good with money. So we are not just going to lend you this money and close our eyes and turn our backs. We are going to lend you this money with strict measures on how you can use it. I honestly don't see the issue with that if we use the IMF money properly. Why would we want to get the IMF to force us into policies? Like, what's the point of that? We're going to borrow money so that the money forces us into austerity measures. That's the word I was trying to remember. Austerity measures. We're going to borrow money to force us into austerity measures. Why? Why not just properly spend the money that we do make so that we don't have to go borrow money that we don't have and be forced to spend less to pay it back? That does not make good financial sense. Why bust yourself so badly that you must then depend on global bankers to tell you how to run your country? Do you think global bankers are the people you want giving you advice on running your country? If you squander your savings, wouldn't you a loan or grant the same way? I'm not sure what you're saying there. If you squander your savings, you wouldn't get a loan or grant. There's no way you're getting that loan or grant. When old age pension drops to $1,500, people would say something else. Or when it drops to nothing. Like, we don't understand in this country. Old age pension is not something there is everywhere. When secondary education is no longer free. Forget about gate. That gate already seems like it's closing slowly, which may not be too bad a thing. But you do understand that the government pays for secondary school education. A rich country like us should be able to manage an IMF loan properly for development. That makes no sense, RL. That makes no sense. If a country is good at managing, they will not need to go to the IMF. That's the secret right there. The IMF is where you go when you hit rock bottom and you need to dig a little deeper to get something below rock bottom. Why would you go to rock bottom and those measures if you are good at managing? I don't understand what you are saying. It's like if you send your company into bankruptcy and it goes into foreclosure and the bank sends their own valuators to close up your companies and tell you how much to sell it for and which thing we have to sell off for cash and all of that. Would you, if you're a good businessman, Would you want to declare bankruptcy on your business for the bank to mash it up and sell it off, and maybe you get something at the end of it all? Or would you run your business properly to not have to take these measures? Like, I honestly don't get what you're trying to say there, RL. You're scaring me, bro. Why? Why would we do that? And I agree with the Prime Minister's statement there. I would prefer a group who are good enough to manage the country's economy in such a way that we don't need the safety net. The safety net comes with difficult consequences because it's supposed to be a last resort. You're not supposed to be pulling that out on a whim. That's not how that is supposed to work. However, the Prime Minister said there was a greater concern that led to the restructuring of Petrotrin in 2018. And more importantly, the second thing was there was a bill that had to be paid of US $850 million in one payment, in one check, on one date, August 2018. And if Petrotrin was not able to pay that check in that month on that day, it would have fallen to the Minister of Finance to find that money from the Treasury or to borrow it from the banks to treat with that, he explained. He said if those actions had been taken, the country would have been downgraded and would have been in the hands of the IMF. Mashipu says tax us into oblivion, maybe, but we're owing the Chinese government billions, though. Well, Mashipu, I am not certain about the funny RL. I'm not certain about how much we owe the Chinese government, but nonetheless, the Chinese government and what we may owe them is still at a different kind of angle, because the idea that they're doing more with the Chinese government is a kind of neo-colonialism business. And to some extent, it could be argued that you're either in the claws of the Chinese or the claws of the Americans, and maybe we're trying to find a way to balance between both. We aren't the only people that are indebted to China. Probably the entirety of the Western world is indebted to China. The United States is indebted to China. So it's not like it's a clear negative on their side per se, because it's pretty opaque. We don't even know what those deals are like. We don't even know what those deals are like with us and China, how those borrows go. White Leather says that large payment was because of a former PNM bad decision in their failed GTL operation. Maybe, but nonetheless, it was a large payment needed. Isn't that why we leased the pitch lake to the Chinese? Some people say so, but you don't get a clear answer on those things ever. Good night, Rose Petal Angel Nick. Rowley said Heritage Petroleum Company Limited has done what Petrotrin was unable to do. The payment that was due on August 2018 by restructuring the company, the new company Heritage, was able to do that, having shaken off all other problems and now being an oil-producing, oil-selling company with a revenue. We were able to restructure that loan, refinance the loan, because Heritage came and took responsibility for US $11.8 billion in debt that Petrotrin was carrying and couldn't service, as well as servicing the loan in US dollars, escaping the stranglehold of the payment. Heritage has been paying its liabilities to the BIR. Heritage is a success story, he said. So they say. And I could understand how those things could work like that. I remember saying this back when the Petrotrin story was in the heat of it. I could understand how politicians could say and deem that Petrotrin has to be dealt with like that, because part of the problem with Petrotrin was the unions and the state workers attached to it. It made it very difficult to actually get things done, to actually get rid of workers. It made it very difficult. If a worker wasn't working, if a worker was overpaid and they weren't doing their job properly, it's very difficult to get rid of them. So every progressive government that comes in hires in a whole bunch of inflated, paid workers, their friends, to join Petrotrin, and they cannot escape. They cannot fire the ones that came in before. Mashipu asks, Heritage a success story? Listen, I could only read as is written. Success story, but forex problems still exist. As far as was said, a lot of the forex problems have to do with who gets access to it. It's not just that the country per se doesn't get enough forex, but when we get it, who gets it? Who gets it? The hundreds of billions that go to PriceSmart kind of swallows up a big deal for a lot of us. But Mashipu, would you say Heritage is not a success story? What part of Heritage would you say is the failure story of Heritage? What part would you say is that? Looking at the reality as it is, not comparing it to the perfect utopian world where Petrotrin, where a government could have gone in and done all the right things, and Petrotrin could have been working perfectly. That's not happening. It never happened. So the friends of friends gets it. But isn't that what Petrotrin and that entire oil and gas industry always was? Like, the executive of Petrotrin was chosen by the government of the day. That is what state companies do. If we don't like the friends of friends business, what we want is the government out of it entirely. We can't want the government to still be in there. The government should have never closed Petrotrin, but the government does hire too many of their friends. What? We can't ask for both of those, because that's what happens. When you have the government controlling these companies, well, the government controls the companies. And, like, even to some extent, we're human beings. Put ourselves as human beings in many of those situations. As a human being, you are in control of a company, and they ask you, they want people to be employed by that company. You have some say in who gets employed. Would you bypass all of your friends and friends of friends who need jobs because they would come asking? Dalip Jairam says, are they telling us the truth about Heritage or just covering failure? Well, Dalip, that right there is really the question now, isn't it? Because I honestly don't know. I cannot say. It very well might be that the numbers we are hearing about Petrotrin about Heritage are lies, and they're using those numbers to try and cover up failures. It might be. I remember Caribbean Airlines back in the 2010-2015 era. They were busing, yet they were donating money to the Children's Life Fund. I don't know if you all remember that piece of bacchanal. And they were donating money to make it seem like, they were really successful and stuff. So yeah, there are cover-ups. The politicians do lie about these things. It's not unheard of. So I don't directly know. What's going on, Ronnie?
I'm sorry, phone fell. Good night. I was sorry, didn't hear that scream. Good night. I just two things quickly. One, it was recommended for Petrotrin to close down not only externally, internally. It was recommended for Petrotrin to close because they could not fire the people they need to fire, right? That's the honest truth. They were top heavy and the tops were permanent. Can't fire them without at least paying them off, right? And, well, you can't fire them at all unless you close down, right? So that was one. It was recommended not only externally. It had places here that recommended it too, right? Two, like I said the last time when I was on this live, I am not above nobody else here who feels real good. If I am in a position, everybody not that I have much friends or family, but my friends and family going through this. I'm not going to play earlier than now because I'm not in, only because you're not in the position, you'll say, well, I'll do the fair thing, I'll do the right thing. But if it's you, you might do worse.
And you know, that's why I am more libertarian leaning, because I don't think the problem is we have the wrong set of politicians. I think the problem is we have politicians and we give them power over us. I think if you give people power over other people.
No, not you work Petrotrin. I'm not talking about Petrotrin, I'm talking about in country. Where I work, I deal Petrotrin on that Petrotrin thing where they recommended it. Could not fire the people because that was the recommendation to fire the people without legal. So they said, yeah, well, I don't know what guys what it is. I know that
And
could not fire.
and it's not only Petrotrin that happened with, you know. Y'all remember Mittal? Y'all remember Mittal?
Yes, yes, City and Tiantec. We advise you same thing for all of them.
Mittal showed you how it's done privately. That's what Mittal showed us. Mittal showed us private free market people don't play this nonsense game that we like to play. Okay, the company isn't making as much money. The workers demand a higher pay. We have an industrial court that is very worker friendly here. So they run to the industrial court. The industrial court says pay the people more. All right. The workers come out on the industrial court steps. We win. We win. Take that, Mittal. Take that. Mittal call from England. Wrap it up. That'll be the end of all of that. Right now, they're still begging the Labour Minister to do something, please, so that we could get a bit of VSEP package from them. That's what goes on. Marshipu asks, and that makes it okay. How did it reach to this in the first place? What do you mean? What do you think you live in? What world do you think you live in? Do you think this is a high school where you have a dean and a principal and you go and tell the dean, Dean, look, Mr. Mittal behaving unfair with me? No, that's not the world you live in. Someone said it was to be restructured. We have restructured these companies over and over and over. It's taking the debt and putting it in a next corner and a next corner and a next corner. After a while, the debt is too big to hide in a corner. We can't restructure it anymore. We have to get rid of the state influence on these things. The reason many of us are so attached to these things is because of the state influence in the first place. It had sweetbread work. Sweetbread work. You're not supposed to be doing nothing and collecting thousands of dollars. I'm sorry, that's not life.
Somebody said something I wanted to respond
to. I would never forget that Mittal story. White Leather says Mittal shut down Tube City operations in November 2015, crippling Central because the new government was not receptive to hearing a meeting about negotiating electricity rates. RL says Mittal pack up shop and was ready to buy yachts and retire and to help workers. Marshipu says, so you believe all the crap that the government sells to you? No, I do not. I said that before, Marshi. I already said that the government could be lying about heritage and its success. You're not listening to what I'm saying, Marshipu. I am not saying that I want the PNM to control it or I want the UNC to control it because one would do better than the other. I am saying this is human nature, and anytime you give state entities the control over companies where they do not lose their personal money when the company busts, it is inevitably going to land in these problems. It is inevitably going to. R. McDonald says, we have a very lying government because I work there, they drills and find oil and then they always say they ain't find anything. Listen. I believe them because I knew people working Petrotrin. If you know, this aggravates me. A lot of Trinidadians like to come up and pretend we don't know the country we're living in. Like, if we don't know Petrotrin was overstaffed with overpaid workers doing nothing. It was a boast. Everybody knows. Hey, you know anybody in Petrotrin? You could get me in Petrotrin. You could get me in Petrotrin. Somebody I know left Petrotrin. The kind of work that they were doing in Petrotrin, the only thing they could have gone to do after that was sell drugs, and that's allegedly what they're doing now. Because the work was so sweetbread, doing nothing for so much money. The only other thing I could do nothing and get so much money in is selling drugs. So best I go into that. And what we're saying is no. The government wasn't supposed to close that because the government is too much lying, which might be true. The government and the politicians do lie, but that doesn't negate the fact that the company is a leech. It is sucking from the country.
But just now, it's the last thing I say. The reason the restructuring didn't work, and it wouldn't have worked, what was happening is people were, oh, shut up. People were not people, but management, upper management and stuff. They had their friends and family coming in, right? And what they would do is they would staff, upper management, right? But very qualified, kind of qualified. So, like, I know of people that have been in class with positions that they weren't supposed to be because we in the same class, right? So plenty of that was also happening. Like my family, Petrotrin, a lot of them left. A lot of them left before it closed. A lot of them left way before, and went to LNG, who left the country because they said it was too corrupt and it was too much friends, and getting it wasn't merit based anymore. And obviously we all what happens when things aren't merit-based. You collapse. So a lot of it, while it had corruption and stuff, the merit wasn't being followed. So if you have people who aren't qualified to do a job, then you're bound to fall in on yourself. So that is also leading into what happened. And we have it to see if IMF come in, people they don't understand. IMF is coming in here. If they come, much like what they did to Barbados a few years ago, people love to and he's the best prime minister, blah 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 blah. Mia Mottley is the only prime minister I know that went to IMF. Did she go there twice? Did she go to IMF twice?
Yeah.
And IMF is coming in and telling you cut 50% of your public service 2 times. You don't 25% started off with. You understand? So, and they don't have a huge public service because they aren't as
rich,
bureaucratic as us. They don't have much things. They're more tourist based, right?
The fact is money. To do a public service is not just bureaucracy because you need the money to pay the people. We could have done that because we had the money. That's just the reality. And now, as some of those money makers are dwindling a bit, Petrotrin being one, we're seeing some of those struggles. That's the property tax and all of that we're seeing pop up.
Why they left? They left because people being promoted over them, people less qualified than them. That's why they left.
And
not leaving.
Listen, Wide Leather. You need to understand everybody's motivation and their priorities in work aren't all the same. My mother, I regularly make this point because I like it, to be very honest. My mother left the public service because she found that it was, she said the word she uses, rigor mortis, would set into you when you're working there. Rigor mortis is when you get stiff after you're dead. And she says the nature of the culture is it creates that kind of work, and some people don't want to work in an environment like that. There are people like that. They rather go out on their own than go every day and do nothing in a corrupt institute. And for some of those who left, they actually made the better decision because they would have been able to get out while they're on top, get another job while not being desperate looking for one, instead of staying to the very end, losing your job, and now desperately with the whole crowd of other Petrotrin workers searching and hunting for jobs.
And Petrotrin workers are as blacklisted on the market though, because no wants to hire them. Is like, you work Petrotrin now, man, you not working, you not this, you not that. Plenty places will not hire Petrotrin workers either.
Correct.
So good luck.
Correct. I'm seeing here, talking about the government needing money and all of that, JTM says no to property tax, of course. The joint trade union movement, no to property tax at this time. Tax the 1%. The sting in the tail is they want to give power to the finance minister to increase the taxation at any time he sees fit. So said JTAM President Ansel Roger at a news conference. Roger accused the Prime Minister and Humbert of attempting to place an onerous tax upon a population already grappling with escalating fuel, food, rent, and children's expenses. He said since the state failed in its economic policies, they are now turning on the population. According to Roger, the government is hell-bent on implementing the onerous tax. We want to join our voices with other voices to make our position clear. Every time the PNM fails with their policies, they turn on the people of the country. Tax them in every conceivable way. We have the chronic issue of foreign exchange. We sell less products to earn the valuable currency. The 1% have all of the priority to the foreign exchange, Roger said. I kind of agree with some of his assessment there, that when the policies fail, they turn to taxation. And that's kind of like, duh. Whoa, I can get a job in the morning if I so desire. Really? Well, I think everyone can get a job in the morning if they so desire. It's what job you're talking about exactly. But you being able to get a job doesn't negate what she just said, by the way, McDonough. But yes, if your policies of revenue generation fail, yeah, you're gonna have to try to turn to the population to tax them, because it's not that their policy, it's not that they're going to change their policies on spending. Why they don't repeal the property tax and reinstate the land tax with a small increase? I think right now the property tax is such a political football that if they backtrack on the property tax, they would look like they lost. I think they would rather do it vice versa than that, Otis. They may rather push through the property tax while changing it to basically take the same amount as the previous building and land and building tax. They already dropped it by 1%, so from 3% to 2%, that's a third off. I won't be surprised if you hear another percent drop off, and it dropped to 1%, and it's back to a very low, nearly nothing fee. But I don't think that they're going to say we're calling it quits on the property tax altogether, because this has been a PNM main point for like the past 15 years. If they go back on it, it's going to look like the UNC won, and the UNC is going to say that they won if the PNM goes back on the property tax. So I'm not sure that they will directly go back on it. But some things that I don't understand, this is a leftist view. This is a leftist view of the world. But to me, the leftist view of the world is incongruent with itself. They say that the 1% control everything. They're greedy and wicked, and they have control of the politicians, and they implement policies around. Okay. But then you're saying, if you have to tax anybody, tax only the 1%. Okay. So if the 1% are greedy and selfish, control the politicians and control the prices, and we tax only them, what's going to happen?
Oh no, and you come and you talk about, because clearly people don't understand. If the 1%ers control everything, right? They have our groceries, they make everything. You think they're gonna pay that 1%?
No, that's the point. You by claiming this 1%, and the 1% talk is a talking point, by the way. This isn't something that is necessarily established fact. It's a talking point taken from a leftist view. 1% control 99% of the economy. Okay, let's say that is true. You are saying the 1% that control the 99% of the economy and have control of our legislators, we are going to try to tax all of the money from them alone to run the country. What do you think they are going to do back?
They don't mind. And most people, like, as you do business, you will realize, like, as a business, price increase don't bother me. not like, I mean, sorry to say it like that, but I know if I see flour going up, maybe my cake going up. That's all. That's all I
Yes,
mean.
exactly. You see, it's like inflation. Inflation doesn't hurt the super wealthy, because the increase in price in grocery goods, that's just going to nominally change their grocery bill. They don't care what the grocery bill was anyhow. Inflation, most of their wealth is stored in assets. Inflation inflates the price of their assets too. So that doesn't bother them. Oh, you want to tax me more? Well, I don't earn a salary. My income isn't a fixed salary. It's not like I collect pension or not like I collect a government salary of 5,500 or whatever at the end of the month. My money comes from my business. So if you decide that you want to take more from me, well, I'm going to take more from them. And it's just going to be a take more kind of system. And if you're going to take so much from me that I cannot take enough from them to recuperate how much you take from me, well, I have enough. I'm going to say, well, forget all of this, pew, and I'm gone.
Yeah, that's I was so sorry to say. Like the boycotts that they call on for of the ones and businesses and whatever, they do realize it affects more affect actual one centers, right? Because maybe they'll just close their stores and fire everybody and
Mm-hmm.
sell it all for the franchise fee or whatever, and go the way they have enough to just buy. And listen, hurting your wealth was nothing for you. We saw that same thing. It was in Zimbabwe did it when they tried to get rid of all the white people. White people, they have the farms and
Not only the white people, yes, Zimbabwe did that to the whites, Kenya did it to the Indians,
so
Europe
getting
did
rid
it
of
to
the
the
people who
Jews.
you're doing it to the people producing and helping stimulate your economy, right? When they leave, what do you think gonna happen?
The economy collapses, and this has been done over and over. As I said, the test on this has been done. Singapore with the Chinese, Kenya with the Indians, Zimbabwe with the whites, Europe with the Jews. I think some one of those South American countries had a Jew problem too, and they did the same thing and found the same result. You kick out these people, and your economy crashes. Right? The JTAM leader went on taxing Playway, making reference to the popular Playway game. Roger said they're even taxing you in your dreams. Imbert wants to tax your little Playway. People run their susu, put up their little money and extend a little room here and there. They are going to tax you for that. You have done nothing to your property and they want to tax you. You have to work out what you must pay as tax on your property. The only thing on your name, they tax you for that. And listen, I'm not totally for the property tax also. Just let it be said. I'm not saying I'm for it. And the note about taxing Playway, this is something I noted so long ago. Playway and those gambling games are mostly played by the poorer class of people. We know that, right? The poorest people play the most Playway and lottery. The first thing is your winning possibility is low, extremely low. And then on top of it, your winnings are taxed. Listen, when you look at the logistics and mathematics of Playway, you understand that Playway is a measure by which the country ensures that poor people don't have much cash. The country redoubles scraping money from the poorest people. Playway is owned by the government. The government of our country is fleecing the poorest people through gambling. And people assume that these are the people that will care about them. People assume these are the people that would care about them. Hey, politics, boy, politics.
Then I must ask, what are all of these taxes people talk about in this country? Please inform.
Now, if you have a business,
I not talk well.
there are a few
Business, all
taxes.
this business, well, we understand, but I don't even understand. 'Cause I don't make enough in my business for taxes in the first place. So,
Are you
yeah,
sure?
yeah. I am compliant. I'm tax compliant with
Oh,
all of these things. I don't have enough, make enough. You know how much I had to make? Rice cake I sell it, you know, and it's actual bacon soda I use it. Huh?
yeah, you could
I'm
make
not
real money. What are you talking about?
not the way I just do it.
So your profit margin too small? Well, then sell it more expensive.
I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time. You want cake next week? I ain't trying that this weekend, but still message me.
White Leather says player marks by the Chinese, no 10% tax, better odds. But you know, that's one of the things that the government would crack down on very seriously if they catch you, you know. How dare you gamble without giving your money to the government? How dare you? Hey, the UNC Bacchanal continues. The UNC Bacchanal continues. Parry is saying, he's saying, I'm not attacking Kamala. I'm just, trying to get this out there. But the UNC is circling wagons. I saw an interesting column on that where they spoke a bit of about the UNC's culture. The UNC's culture and why it was created like this. The UNC's civil war. I'm scrolling a bit through the article. With her as leader, the UNC has lost 2 straight general elections in 2015 and 2020. The one-term prime minister looks set to contest a 4th election as leader. Ever since she ran in 2015 on a leader-centric election marketing campaign that sold the virtues of Kamala the leader rather than UNC the party, she has tightened her grip on her party. And that is 100% true. The campaign strategies of not only 2015, 2010 had some of that too. Where from that point on, the focus was on the leader. Kamala. In fact, there was stories about Kamala mania. Remember those stories being pushed? Kamala mania? Well, yes, the intent was to make the individual so large, nearly larger than the party. And you did do that. To the extent now where the party doesn't have national appeal, but the individual is so large within the party, you can't get rid of them. For the 2020 election, she placed many of the old guard, the late Fazal Karim and Ramona Ramdale, to name a few, with fresh, mainly younger faces. She neutered remaining members of the old guard, Dr. Rudal Munilal, to the point where he is now her enforcer. It was quite the turnaround for Munilal, who had no love for Uber loyalists like Barry Padarat when he first arrived on the scene in 2015. The double-edged sword of making the leader rather than the party the focal point is that she is yoked to its electoral failures. It's hard to find anyone in her own party who thinks that the opposition leader, 72 years old next month, can defeat Dr. Keith Rowley in 2025 at the 3rd time of asking. White Leather says Kamala was resummoned as leader in 2022. She is the choice. Talk done. Okay, White Leather, I see that you're a Kamala supporter, and bro, no hate. You're free to support who you want. I'm joking. I'm joking. You're free to support who you want. You could be one of those that have the picture with the garland and everything right to the max. But understand that the support.
I still drink from my Kamala cup. It's a huge cup that is hold plenty coffee. Big up Kamala on that cup.
She is the mother of the nation. Yes, Otis. Yes. The mother of our nation. That was where they sold her at. And now you can't buy her back. You sold her at that and you can't buy her back. What you gonna do? You see, the idea of a political party is the party is supposed to be the largest part. The party is supposed to be larger than the individual. And regularly you hear Mrs. Prasad Bisesa talking these days about UNC and the largeness of the party and the importance of the party and all of that and all of that. But the reality is she is now larger than the party. Or at least within the party, she is larger than the party. She is the main focus. The truth is, though, I wonder if that's not a kind of fault of UNC in and of itself. Because Mr. Pandey was similar in the UNC too. He was the very revered leader. And the thing is, in the end, that didn't work out well for him. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe the female side may save her though, because it was easier for people to get even near violent with Mr. Pandey when they got upset with him. But would you get violent and cuss up a 72-year-old grandmother? Maybe not.
Yeah. But I don't know if the party has okay. The party, not the voters, any party, not the actual party card members I'm talking about. I'm talking about the executive of the party, I guess I want to say. They are the ones that kind of would decide when they're ready to get rid of her. Because they were the ones that decided when they wanted to get rid of Pandy.
But here's the thing, though. I think because she was part of the move to get rid of Pandy, I think she realized where the problems were. And she keeps rotating the power brokers in the party. So one of the things that Pandey had is he had lots of powerful people around him. So that's a good thing to build a coalition and build a powerful unit. But when it comes time to get rid of you, those powerful people actually have sway. But what happens if every time someone gains power, you cut them down? So the executive is always a rotating bunch of new faces who owe you all of their loyalty.
Well, that's sad because, well, I guess we just had to wait for her to die in opposition. Because they're not going to get rid of her. She's smart enough to move them around in time. And she is not ever going to be Prime Minister of this country again, unfortunately. She really isn't. And I hope that she doesn't mash up UNC. Because, honestly, if UNC gone, this country in a mess, you know.
I think if UNC gone, something else would replace it. Very quickly.
But they can't replace it quickly enough. Like, listen, who they gonna replace? Who gonna come up?
Remember, Pandey's daughter has a party right now, eh? Bear that in mind.
She not doing anything that, I'm sorry to say, like...
I think, well, I think she isn't doing anything because it doesn't really make sense doing anything. I don't think she is doing as in she speaks. She makes sure that people know she's still around. People know that her party is still around. And she does that. But in terms of spending money to contest elections and getting into that free, that probably makes no sense on her part because she probably understands there isn't going to be a good result from that. And I could understand that from her side. And however, if she remains in the wings and UNC were to collapse on itself, her party will be in pole position. Her party will be in pole position. White Leather says this is still a democracy. If people don't like Kamala or the UNC for whatever reason, vote the PNM. That's all. Well, White Leather, I don't understand what you are saying. Like, this is exactly what we are talking about. Are you just replying in the comments, reinforcing the things that we say? That's what you're saying? I mean, that's literally what we're saying. It is how democracy works. It is how first past the post work. First past the post usually encourages a two-party system. And when you get that two-party system, it's either or. And if the either makes themselves unelectable, it's always going to be the or. And that's what we're saying. And if you're saying, well, yeah, if you don't like the either, it was be, yes, that's what we're saying. It's going to be the or. And here's the thing. I don't want a one-party country because it doesn't help. It doesn't benefit the country. It is authoritarian by nature, and you don't have that balance of power where you have the struggle of power where you could survive in between. You have just one direction taking all of that power. I don't think Trinidad benefits from that. Whether I like PNM or UNC, I think Trinidad benefits from a strong UNC. That's why I would like to see them strong.
I would as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. UNC party card holders, go out and do something.
But that's a hard thing. It's a hard thing. You see, even Dr. Munilal, probably like from not on the national scene. I don't think Dr. Munilal is that liked nationally, but from an internal scene, Dr. Munilal is a well-known name in the UNC. He has very high name recognition, and he attempted to take down Kamala. He attempted, and was soundly put in his place, and he never made a note about it after. So just the nature of those power games makes it difficult for people to stand up and try and do something. You see, like Mr. Rushton Parry is trying to do something now, and you see the entire party looking to shut him down. Joe says if she steps down and makes way for a younger, more vibrant person at the wheel, they may stand a better chance. Of course they will. Especially if it is that she steps down. So it's not that very contentious election is held that already puts the party in a frictious manner. But if she steps down and anoints her successor, as it were, that's going to give them a lot of boost.
That's true.
Munilal have too many court matters. Well, that's kind of now. When he was making his move was before the court matters, to be clear. The last segment we're jumping in tonight is on property tax. Imber to pay $9,000 property tax. Property tax for Minister's Marval home. Finance Minister Colm Imbert yesterday disclosed that his property tax will amount to $9,000 a year, but he does not plan to query it, even though he thinks it is too high. And I do not find this to be something to lord him over. How is this a positive thing? How is that a positive thing? To tell me that you find your valuation was overdone, but you're not going to query it. What? Were you telling me? What are you telling me? 9,000 rent, by the way, 9,000 tax, by the way, puts his rent at $25,000 a month. They evaluate his rent at. What's Mr. Imbert's qualification? Is he the engineer, or is it his brother, or both of them? I think he's an engineer, right? If he's an engineer, he would have some knowledge on this valuation business. Are you telling me that you are okay that as an engineer, you evaluate your property and think this is wrong, but you're just going to leave it as is? Are you trying? What are you trying to tell me? That as a country now, you're showing me by example that I am supposed to leave my valuation as is too? No.
Yeah, exactly what he's saying.
Sir, what rubbish is this? The process is supposed to be transparent, and I'm supposed to understand why this thing is the way it is. If a civil engineer, one of the country's preeminent civil engineers, who was the Minister of Works and Transport overseeing buildings all around the country, who built a stadium in one of the islands in the Caribbean. I heard some bacchanal about that some while ago with a hurricane passing and all of that. But this man has experience in this field. He is the finance minister now, in charge of this whole thing. He got an evaluation for his property and is saying, I think it's too expensive.
But to me, this should be very, this is what he should have been like. My own was too high, so I think that everybody else's own is possibly too high, so to reevaluate. Because this is crazy. You can afford 9,000, right? You think other people are struggling could afford it? Like, if to pay over $100 more or something like that, let's be real, let's be honest.
It's ridiculous. And I am not sure I agree with the idea that you tax people based on the value of their homes. Because the value of someone's home is not necessarily signaling of their income.
Exactly.
someone could have inherited it, while some people could have apportioned a different proportion of their salary towards house building. So let's say I was maxing in house building. I was devoting every extra cent I got to building my house because my intention was to make sure I have a couple children. I want to make sure they have somewhere to live when I'm dead. And now my taxes are higher because I focused on building a house, while the guy who barely scraped together a shack and is making the same income as me, but spending his money on playway and rum, his taxes aren't as high. That does not add up to me.
But exactly, because yes, while you want to, and if property taxes use how I say to use it, I understand you want to receive some monies to help with things in the neighborhood or whatever, in the community or whatever, right? But if all of us work, as you say, we can the same amount of money as somebody else. Some people decide to buy a home, some people decide to drink rum, whatever. You're basically punishing people for making better decisions with their lives, right? And then how would I know? How am I supposed to find the extra money to pay for this? It's not to say like I rented my house out. Now, if I was renting a house, then we could be like, okay, cool, I'll pay the property tax, but I live in my house. I can't pay rent. So you're charging me to live in my own house. Oh gosh.
Yep.
Reasonable,
and charging you by how nice the house is. So the government is charging you rent to live in your house based on how nice you build your own house. So if you build your house too nice, the government is saying you have to pay us more rent. That sounds ridiculous. That sounds ridiculous. I don't like that idea. That does not sound like a good idea to me. That doesn't sound like a pleasant idea to me at all. And just because Mr. Imbert could pay $9,000 a year without blinking, and that's fine by him because maybe that's one of the cars that he may sell after. That's the taxes he saved in buying the Mustang that he could sell back after a while and make back all of that money. So that's inconsequential to him. That $9,000 is irrelevant to him. But maybe there might be somebody who is getting that where $9,000 is more than their monthly salary.
That's unfair. And what would we rather them just have like, I don't know, what's a good option? Because I personally, I am of the opinion that you need to pay for things.
Me too.
That's my opinion. I don't have a problem with tax, but I don't like the as how they have it. I'm not a big fan of how they have it. But I do think that there needs to be something where like you live somewhere, you pay something. So
here's
again expenses.
Yes, here's how I could see some of that. Probably not even necessarily name it the property tax. You have a local government tax. Some call it their council tax in the UK. I think they call it, or estate tax or something like that. I pay a tax to my local government. That makes sense. My local government has to keep running, so I pay them to keep them running. And maybe based on the general wealth of my district, that happens. So there are wealthier districts that would pay their local governments more, and their local governments would be able to do more. There are districts that would pay theirs less, and they would be able to do less. That makes sense to me. But as I say over and over, the property tax is not that. The property tax is central government collecting the money and promising you that they are going to redistribute it back to the local governments really well. And as we spoke about Petrotrin and those other stories before, we understand that governments do lie. And sometimes they make mistakes and errors.
From the time you put the money into the general coffers of the country, you're not going to see it again. Sorry to see. And I guess they're doing it again. They are doing it because of the disparities. They do. Oh, well, experiences are better stuff because there I'm so that blah, blah, blah. And I live it. And da 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 da. So they're taking it so that they could redistribute it I see it. Because
Yeah, that's how they say it. But I don't even see it as that's why, Ronnie. The reason why is not so they could redistribute it better, but so the government could get more money. That's it. It's not that they necessarily care about redistribution that much, because I don't think they do. They're okay with making 80,000 while paying the bottom of the public service $3,000. They don't care about fairness in redistribution. It's they want to be able to redistribute it. It's not that they care about redistributing it. They want to be able to redistribute it. They want the money in their hands. That's what they're talking about. Lilith says, my dad left a brand new house for me, then he passed away. I'm a young single mom of two. This unfair. And there are people like that. And tell me what's that going to create in this case. If the property tax becomes so exorbitant, what you're going to see is if you live in a house that's too good for your income, as determined by us, the government, we are going to say that you must now sell this house. And who is going to be able to afford a house like that? The Coleman birds, who could pay $9,000 and don't blink about it. And they know that's extra, but I don't even bother. Yeah, I know that's more than I'm supposed to be paying, but who cares anyway? 9,000. That's what my daily income for one day. Forget about that. That's the people who are going to buy out all of your houses. And then you don't have enough money to own the house and pay taxes. But you're going to have enough to rent it though.
Because I sure you can't even call that rent. That price them telling you for rent, you can't even call that. If you want to move, let me say the same, I can't really afford this. Let me go and move it a little house and rent out my nice house. I sure you cannot get that as market price. Because it's all what is deemed fair, at least a little fair. That's not fair.
And that's the thing. I saw one senator say that you should collect taxes from people who are actually renting. And I understand that statement, because how are you going to, even the rental value becomes strange because I'm not collecting rent. I am not collecting rent. How are you going to tell me what my rental value is when I'm not collecting rent? It feels very forced. But if I am collecting rent, then you could tax me based on my actual rental value. And that might make sense. It's a commercial property. You tax commerce. But like taxing people on living seems a bit strange. Unless it's for them to take care of the drains, etc. around their house. And in that case, then make it a local tax. I have no problem paying the guys to clean the drain and patch the roads. Hey, we had an interclose there, people. We had an interclose. Are there any further comments or questions on the inside? Before I dive out, the cost of a house is beyond the reach of most. This will further push the cost up. Might.
I don't know. Might afford to sell. So would it really push it up? I doubt that there are people. Sorry.
It's a question, Ronnie. Here's why I think it's a question about which direction it might push it. Because if the tax is of the nature where middle class people are struggling to pay it, and then it's going to be the wealthier people who are able to buy out properties from middle class. That would actually make those properties more exclusive, not less. What you'd want if you wanted prices to decrease is something that would force upper middle class to need to sell. It would force the extra properties held by the upper middle class to be a liability. So here's something that would have made a lot of sense to me. Anybody, second property gets highly taxed. Your first property, no taxes. So in this country, we allow you to, you get your first property. But if you're telling me you're trying to, allow people to live, because that's ostensibly what we're doing here. We want more people to be able to live comfortably in the country. Okay. Well, then you do something that encourages the country to not sell, say, two-bedroom homes for $1.6 million. And what would do that? Well, if the guy who owns a property, a two-bedroom home, while he lives in a 10-bedroom home, if he owns that two-bedroom home and he's not living there, it's a second property, then it starts to accrue a serious amount of tax for him because that's a commercial property. We are taxing you based on your commercial interest in it. If you sell it, it no longer is taxed on you, and the person who buys it as their first property doesn't have to pay taxes on it. So it increases the impetus to sell it and probably might drive down the price. An idea. Lyndon Mac, what's going on, bro?
Nathan, how you doing?
I'm well, man.
You know, every time I join your lives, either you're going on almost finish. I change the status to make sure to remind me, you know. But I want to say this to you, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm glad that we're having this discussion. Most importantly, we need to have solutions. And I'm saying, and I will literally say this to you, if citizens do not want this, the government of 41 persons sitting in a House of Parliament cannot tell citizens that they have to force to pay it. And I say this is the problem with our mindset. I have this idea that when these ministers sit in the House, that they can just go and pass the law and then we have to come. Right? My solution, and I've literally said this, that if people come together and state that they want to file an injunction to block or bar the government from any form of taxes until they can give a proper accountability to the people of how they are spending their money, then they cannot come and pass it in the court of in the House of Representatives.
Which judge is going to grant that injunction?
Listen, let me share this to you. Injunctions by people is not a new thing. It is new in Trinidad and Tobago. A lot of Trinidad and Tobago do not know their rights. And this is a problem. So are you saying to me literally that the parents who own their homes and should have the right to enjoy their freedom, their property, now have to take an Americanized system to say you now have to be paying a tax where the government does not have spending and cannot give the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago accountability of spending? You have to know. And what I'm saying is, we have to understand that this has to be a joint and a collaborative effort. 50,000 persons, 100,000 persons decide that they are not going to pay a tax until the government has proper accountability as to how they are spending their money, then we're making sense. We have watching in 8 years, I'm one minister, the country in probably close to $70 billion in debt. 70 billion is paying off that form of debt, and they are going to retire in the next whenever they go to retire. The grandparents and the great grandparents, that is crazy. I just heard him in Parliament saying today that if you want to be able to direct water, this is why you need to pay the corporations so you can be able to have water. That is crazy. So why are we paying WASA for taxes, and on top of the rate that you're paying WASA, you're still taking the taxes from that money? What is all that money to do? And we have to understand in Trinidad and Tobago, money has to make sense. Finally, I will say this because I totally agree with you as one being in real estate. What is the equal value that the government is providing to me? Because we all know from what I have seen, the government assessment was fraudulent. There is no a government could come to say to you rental property of your house is, because to do a rent assessment of property, it means you have to create a different classification for people who are not renting and people renting out the house, etc., etc. Right? Most importantly, is the measure of service. You're calling me to pay a tax to you for property that I have already inherited, and property that that taxes to material has already been paid on. So that every material, every son, every whatever bill, you already collected tax on that money. You have to be providing me a measure of service to determine that this much be the level of taxes that I'm paying. If that is not the case, then all are doing is putting me in further in debt, and we have to recognize that don't fall for that scam whereby they're saying that you have to pay a tax on the property that you own. That means, according to the same constitutional fundamental rights, I shouldn't have the right to enjoy my property because I now have to be burdened in paying you a tax where you are not paying me an equal service.
Correct, correct. I agree 100% with everything you said there. And I've said it before. I think the government actually has a problem with this property tax business. And that's why they would all it's nearly 20 years now the PNM government has been talking and trying about this property tax because it's not going to be something that they get to implement straightforward. If the majority of people do not pay it, it's going to be problems. Just the point you're making there, Lyndon Mac. If the country decides, listen, we don't want to pay that, Imbert could say what he wants, I'm not paying a cent, you are not going to arrest everyone. We know that's not going to happen. You are not going to seize everyone's property. So I think the government really has found themselves in a difficult area here. And I think the culture of Trinidad, they say we don't boycott and we don't think and we don't stand up for our rights and all of that. I think the culture of Trinidadian homeowners, Trinbagonian, let me say homeowners, because Tobago is very much in this. Trinbagonian homeowners is one that they don't want to pay you extra. Listen, I work in contracting. Homeowners don't want to pay any extra. Not 1 cent. That's your best price? And even after they ask you if that's your best price and you start the job, they're looking to introduce a little something extra in the contract to make sure, you do a little something. As a single mother, contractors know those lines. I'm a single mother, you have to do something. You could help me with, and you could help. Trinidadians not aiming to pay anything extra. So I think they may indeed run up in some problems here. And it will be very interesting, the enforcement mechanism they would be trying to use here. That's my most curious thing here. How are they going to attempt to enforce this when people say no? Reading over on YouTube the comments, I have to make sure the YouTube people felt there. And it's one person. Lamb says, good night. Overhiring is a problem with state companies. We would want to help our partners. Yes, we would. Let's be real. But at the same time, the future of the country is at stake. They're saying landlords will raise rent. That would be the most unethical thing to do, let me tell you. Is it not true, Nathan? Big players like Caribbean, Bermudez, you don't think they don't have large amounts of foreign exchange? Yes, I do. The argument is that property tax will help the community in terms of cleaning up drains, garbage disposal, and other community building activities. I agree, that is the argument, and I would love those things. And that's why I say, if you're trying to make that argument, for me, the best way to make that argument is tell me all of my taxes will go directly to my local government.
Okay.
But that still would make sense. That still would make sense, right? Do you?
That's not what I didn't get to answer. I didn't agree with what you said.
Okay.
So I agree with 100% of it. I would agree with 75% of what you said. You see, right. we go on and on about, we don't see where our taxes going to the free CXC that we get to do, it going to the free Cape that we get to do, it going to all the freebies longer free, but we had a lot of free degrees going out of this country. We have so many things that are free to us. It is in that $300 ticket to Tobago. You understand? All of these things that we get. We have a lot of free things in this country. I think as the wells start to dry up, yes, we got the free things because we had the oil and gas and whatever. As the wells start to dry up, you don't think the free things will start disappearing? And we as a country, we do want to give up the free things. I don't want to have to pay $250 for my child to write CXC per subject. I would love for them to have free CXC. So, something, if that means that they have to find money through other means, I don't like it. But I understand it. Understand? I'm saying it's not to say like I pay, yes, property tax. As I said, I don't like it, and I agree with that. The system needs to be reworked. I think that there must be payment on something. We do not pay for our garbage collection, we pay for our road cleaners, do not pay direct for these things. You understand what I'm saying? If that making any sense? If
Well,
you understand.
yes, yes, yeah. Daniel Knight's property tax, according to the bill, is going to a local government account of each regional corporation. I haven't read that in the bill, to be honest. I haven't read that. You could probably highlight that piece in the bill. But I have asked members of the PNM, high ranking members, does this go to a local government coffer? They have told me that it goes to the consolidated fund. Now, the strange thing is, I heard Faris once say something, Mr. Faris Al-Rawi, once say something about that local government account, and then I heard the consolidated fund story. If I were to go leaning on which one I believe,
It is definitely consolidated.
let me just see. If I were to tell you which one I believe. And Lyndon Mac, you're saying that still won't make sense. Why are you saying that still won't make sense, even if it were to go directly to a local government?
Right. So, what's the difference between what you consider as local consist of the regional corporations versus the if you have to say general government are actually sitting in the ministries? Literally, is it what you consider different? And let me explain that from yeah. When we directly sum up a bill budget, we see country directly is in an income of 60 something billion dollars, or let's just say 60 something billion that will go towards X amount goes here, Y amount go here, and the other amount here. Okay? That's basically how the bill is normally done. If we are saying that there is a situation, this new taxes is going to what you call regional corporations, are we saying that the budget that was already catered for, because this is the problem I have with what you call balance, is it that we are saying that what has been budgeted for where the regional corporations should be paid to do this, and is it that we say that the money is not going there? So that is the way it goes across. Sister said literally that we're not paying for this and we are not paying. These persons are paid. So if we are saying to the public, just now, miss, just now, remember that when you own a business in Trinidad and Tobago, the taxation is different. I have heard the Minister of Finance said that here we have inland revenue, which is responsible for doing audits of companies, that the government is having to do the audit for companies. So we already have a problem. Companies in Trinidad and Tobago are making money, and you're saying to the companies, if you're making $250,000, right, that you are aimed to pay. I own a business. I have to pay green levy tax. I have to pay corporate tax, and which is based on whatever business I am into. I already have two taxes that I am able to pay. My question is, how are you unable, as the inland revenue, to directly do the of audits that is needed for every company in Trinidad and Tobago? And then you're saying you have a collecting taxes, but then you want to charge more taxes on top of that when you can't account for the people who already taxes. That makes no sense to me.
Now I understand what you're saying. You're saying that the accountability doesn't exist now, and we should not move one step further without
Until
accountability.
Mechanisms in place to account for every dollar that's earned in to call a surplus.
I understand that, and that makes perfect sense. That's what I said. I agree with that 100%. However, I also understand that I don't think any country in the world has that level of accountability from their state or government.
Let me share this. That is actually not. I have looked at the model. I have looked even the United States directly. And if let's look at the United States.
Let's look at the United States, not Finland. Finland is a very small monolithic country. So
right. Now, when you know literally that the government already has what you call the intelligence into your information, they have access to direct bank transaction, your kind of money, so that what you talk about in Trinidad and Tobago, by your employee, etc., they already system IRS, etc., to see your own, etc. Trinidad.
But I'm not talking. We weren't talking about their ability to mark your money. We're talking about their ability to hold themselves accountable.
Right, and let me say this to you. I am of the American system and are there to hold a number of persons accountable at Trinidad.
More accountable. I agree with more, but I'm saying I don't think any system in the world, barring maybe some small, more tribal something where they're more like a family, but I don't think you're going to find many systems or any systems in the world where the government holds themselves accountable. That's the problem I say at the very beginning. It's the problem that libertarians talk about. It's the intractable human issue, where it's a human nature problem. The problem is that you put humans in a position where they have a large amount of power over many other people's money, and they don't have to be held accountable for it. So you're nearly always inevitably going to end up with those problems. That's why I say something like pay the taxes to the local government, because what that does is it makes the accountability closer to people. So if your property taxes, I believe you're Tobagonian, if your property taxes in Tobago went to Farley instead of to central government, you know where Farley's house is. And even smaller, let's say it went to even the more like the village council, the direct group of people in charge of doing the maintenance and upkeep work around the community, because that's what property tax is supposed to be for. If I'm paying money based on my building, it's based on the upkeep of the physical surroundings around me. So if I'm paying those people directly, that makes more sense. Now, I'm not saying, like somebody pointed out about the Grandie Corporation missing money and all of that. I'm not saying that that's an infallible solution and that's going to make everything run perfectly. But I'm saying, if you wanted me to believe that this really had the intention of best helping my local community, that's what I would be looking for.
Yeah, but so let me see if I understand what you're saying. We're saying, okay, pay to the local government, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing when we say local government, we are referring the boroughs and the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes.
Now, let me ask the question, because I don't like to put the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We already do accountability at the highest level of government. Now we're saying that let's put it the local government, the boroughs and the corporations. Let me ask the question now. Do we have the level of accountability to ensure that the same problem that we have existing at the avenue of general government will not happen in the boroughs and the corporations?
I would like to just interject a little bit. I'm not sure about that, but government elections are, to me, more important than general elections, and that's the elections that nobody is out to vote for, right? Sometimes you meet your councillors and stuff like that. Your councillor is somebody, in most cases, living nearby you. You should have a better relationship with them than you do to your MP, right? So if you are paying this person direct, then you should, if you are paying attention to who is in your area, you're talking to them, then you should should be able to say, look, blah blah blah, my drain is blocked, this flooding, whatever situation you have, and you're supposed to have a better rapport with that person. And again, difference between and your MP is elected for something different than what your councillor is elected for.
Correct.
A lot of people,
Ronnie, sorry to interrupt you there because you make a real good point there, and I want to jump on that point before you finish it. The MP, what I'm recommending is kind of going to what the politics supposed to be. The MP is not actually supposed to be your focus for getting your roads fixed. He is legislation. He's your member of parliament. You're supposed to talk to him about what legislation you'd like to see put forward in our parliament. Your local government is supposed to be the hands-on people in charge of the problems you see on a day-to-day basis. And if I were to guess, if we were to put out a probability question, the probability of getting accountability, would it be more probable I get accountability from Dr. Rowley as my prime minister, or from neighbor George, who went up for local councillor and lives right out the road in the red house? Who would I get more accountability from? More likely. Yeah. Yeah.
Listen to us saying thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Our culture has been bred in an avenue of corruption.
True.
Corruption starts at the head. And if you don't put stringent measures, says you need to send a message out to show that people not get away with certain crimes. Because why the hurry if you structure to ensure that you have going to have the same level of corruption at the
I don't believe the same level. I was going to agree with you that you may have corruption, but I don't believe the same level. I think you are going to have some differences. And the thing is, I don't think it is possible for us to get perfection. So we have to work within the imperfect system. We're not going to be able to get them to stop everything until they give us accountability. So maybe what we could get is move the money from the hands of the people that are more difficult to get the accountability from. It's known the bigger governments, the bigger the government is, the wider the reach of the government, the harder it is to get accountability from them. So that's why you want governments dispersed, decentralization, the thing that they have been waving and dangling in front of our faces for decades. The reason they talk about that is because it's understood. Decentralizing that power actually gives more accountability.
all right. I guess we got disagree on that.
But either way, Lyndon Mac, it's not like we're going to find out, you know. Because it's not like they're going to do either of our suggestions. I saw Daniel was pointing at the provision. Something I noted just now, something I'm noting, that's in the local government reform. That's not in the property tax itself, which being separated into separate bills makes me wonder if there could be some kind of malfeasance on the inside. Partially because, as I said, I asked the chairman of one of the regional corporations. I have that interview on my YouTube, and he literally told me that part of their reasoning for not directly depositing it into regional corporation funds is because then there's going to be too much disparity between corporations. So I don't know how both of those are going to happen. Maybe what they're talking about there about the tax going into those funds is they will collect the tax and distribute the tax into those accounts as they see fit. Maybe that might be, because I don't know how redistribution is going to happen if it goes directly into a fund. And either way, I think there may be some problems because you have statutory authorities. Not every agency is even able to collect taxes. So if they don't give the local government the actual statutory power to collect the taxes, then your taxes would have to be collected by the Board of Inland Revenue, and then they will redistribute. And okay, they could say that the taxes will go to this. They could say that. But is there some provision to enforce that? Like these are questions I have, because as I said, when asked about it, the answers have been too shifty for me. The answers have been really way too shifty for me. All right. Yeah, Ronnie, give me a closing statement.
I just had one question for Linda. Sama.
Yes, ma'am.
So basically, you live Tobago, right?
Yes, I do.
Right, good. So you would be familiar in the first year at least, executive, the THA executive coming in. I'm sure you would have seen them and you would have to be like, hey, Faith girl, da 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 da. And you get to say what you had to say. And even Faith even said that people was coming up to her house and they wasn't getting paid and stuff like that. It's the same thing you're looking for with your local government. You want somebody that you could front the house. We cannot go in front of them men with big guns escort you to a jail cell. You understand? So that's kind of basically where you want to go. I'm sure you would have seen your assemblyman somewhere, sure, whatever. And I'm sure if you was brave, and I mean, you seem like a very, out person. You could have be like, hey, bro, what's going on here? I do like this, blah, 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 blah. You understand? I'm sure you have done it. And it's the same way people in Trinidad should be able to do it. In Trinidad, we not, or at least we are not very aware of who is close to us. And your man, council and whatever. We're not aware of those people because we do not vote in those elections. And those are the people that we need to know. My father has said several times, oh God, this road bad. That's why I go and vote all PNM because Senanan is fixing my road. I like that if Senanan is not supposed to fix your road. Senanan is deal with highways. And you will vote on Senanan and UNC will bring whoever and that person will not fix your road. And he was like, I'll vote them out too. Great, you're not making an effort to learn. You're not making an effort to learn who you need to talk to about what you need to talk to them about. And that is me. I'm trying not to be able to learn. Firstly, I think Tobago has it better because they have it kind of more, that's who you need to speak to in Tobago. Versus in Trinidad, have so much people that they ain't even sure who. So I think we need to be more informed.
That's true. That's true. Daniel Knights, bro. If that's so, I'll have to go and do some digging on the local government reform bill. See if I could find out a lot more about that bill.
Well, currently, what's happening right now? There's constitutional reform.
Well, I know they are having consultations on that. Yes.
Right, but I will also say that the reach is very poor. Seeing the page and how the page is reflecting on social media, but I guess we will wait to see how the statistics goes. But I would really want to say this as my closing, Nathan. I think we need reformation that has real accountability and it allows the independent powers the power to do the job that they need to do without having to feel that they have to go on at the top. And that's what really holds the press back many times when we don't that measure of enforcement. I think we need that level of accountability. Once we have institutions that are independent and cannot be easily swayed by action, then we should be able to have some measure of accountability paying it forward. That is just my thing. Great program, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks. All right, people. That's all we have for now. I hope you are educated, informed, and entertained. This has been the Mindful Live. I am Nathan Springer. I'm currently looking through that local government reform bill. I'm going to have to take a good read through this whole thing. Thank you, Daniel Knight, for pointing me in that direction. I agree with the lady. People need to be informed and watch parliamentary debates. I do watch quite a few parliamentary debates. I do. I'll have, and I'm basing this, as I said, I was basing this not necessarily on the debates, but on a conversation I had with one of the chairmen of the regional corporations. That's what I was basing what I was saying on. So I will check the local government reform bill, and then I will ask some people in the know about it and see how it actually fits in, because sometimes you realize that what the words of the bills have other words that kind of go quite against it. So I will be doing that. Daniel Knight says, I agree with the lady, people need to be informed and watch parliamentary debates, and I agree with that. All right, people, that's all we have for now. I'll see you guys again for the next Mindful Life, which is going to be tomorrow night around that 9:30 p.m. time. Tonight we started exact 9:30. Yeah? Nisi said she didn't get her notification because we started on time, so it probably was a little strange. All right. I'll see you guys then. Until then, people, be safe, stay well.
Bye.
Yeah, I'm reading it right now, Daniel. I have it up. I'm reading that right now. All right, people, laters, stay well. Bye. Peace.